Okay, I think we'll get started now. Okay, thank you all for joining us. Thank you. My name's Sharon Bradley. I'm the head of the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance Secretariat. Yesterday, we convened BOGA ministers to discuss a way forwards in terms of achieving an ambitious deal here at COP29, which supports the implementation of the GST, including the orderly, just, and equitable transition away from fossil fuels that we collectively agreed at COP28. Today, we also release a statement from the BOGA ministers with the support of our partner, the European Commission, and the UK. We also are announcing that we will open an NDC window under the BOGA Fund to support Global South governments in integrating the transition away from fossil fuels within their NDCs. And we will build on our experience collectively to provide NDC guidance for those who want to join us in collaboration with the NDC partnership. And details of all of this are in the press release and the statement that should be online right now. So, with all of that said, I will invite to the stage, we will have opening remarks, quick opening remarks from 4 speakers, each representing a different perspective, and then we'll invite our other BOGA ministers and ambassadors to the stage for Q&A, and we'll try and have as much time for that as possible. So, if I can begin by welcoming Lars Åkergaard, Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities from the Government of Denmark, as our co-chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I heard that someone has said here at the COP that fossil fuels are a gift from God. Well, I say only if that gift stays in the ground, because in creation of fossil fuels in prehistoric times, massive amounts of carbon were stored, and we must work for them to remain in storage. Therefore, more oil and gas producing countries must set an end date for production. At this COP, we are experiencing pushback on last year's decision to transition away from fossil fuels. The text presented today falls short on mitigation, and that is clearly unacceptable. I'm standing here today as co-chair of BOGA with fellow ambitious leaders in this crucial time in the negotiations. Our message to all leaders is clear and united. We cannot afford to turn back on progress. We cannot leave this COP without moving forward on mitigation. In my own country, we set a 70% target towards 2030. We didn't exactly know how to meet that when we set it. We are on track now. We have introduced now a carbon tax on the agricultural sector, increasing renewables. E-mobility is growing. Biomethane, solar and wind gets online. And even CCS will come into play before we hit 2030. These are all solutions that are available out there. Prices are dropping. The economy in the green transition follows also with economic benefits, so there's something here for everybody to reach out for. What we will decide here in Baku will influence the level of ambitions in the NDCs and countries and what they will present next year. It will also affect the willingness from the private sector to invest in the green transition. With no clear road forward from meeting our mitigation targets, why should the private sector be willing to invest? So also there we have a huge responsibility to take. This group is clear that on the need for increased finance. I acknowledge that developed countries must take the lead. I acknowledge that developed countries need to provide more finance, and that we need to improve the enabling conditions for mobilizing finance and investments at scale that are necessary to transition away from fossil fuels. On this background, I stand here alongside our partners who are ready to put our words into action and follow up on what we agreed in Dubai. And we call for a transformational new goal on climate finance that supports the delivery of the global stocktake goals on energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. And if I can now welcome to the stage Susana Mohammed, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development from the Government of Colombia, as our Global South friend and a valued member and fund partner within the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. Minister.
Thank you very much. Colombia joined the Beyond Oil and Gas group and coalition, BOGA, because we first understand the value of the science of climate change. Second, all countries that are on the equator are the ones that are suffering the most with the impacts of climate change. And third, because we hope that there is a possibility of a development model that goes beyond the fossil fuel unequal and life-threatening system that we have created in the next centuries. Colombia is in the search of justice, in the search of equality, and in the search of the possibility to create a way of living in the 21st century that makes peace with nature. And for a forest rich in biodiversity country like Colombia, going beyond fossil fuels implies being able to affirm its culture, economy, and capacities in life-affirming systems. And that's why we keep committed to this climate convention in the hope that we can agree on everybody meeting their responsibilities. In that perspective, at this COP, we cannot live without a mitigation program where all parties can find each other, learn from each other, work with each other, and accelerate action for transitioning away of fossil fuels. The current situation is not only unacceptable, but highly worrying for the countries that are putting the victims in large amount, but also for the future of multilateralism and the Paris Agreement itself. What is the point of having an agreement and a convention if we cannot deal with the issue that creates the problem? So we call the parties to, in solidarity, and everybody playing the role, because in this transition, everybody can play the role, including oil exporter and producer countries, such as Colombia, forest countries, such as Colombia, and victims of climate change, such as Colombia. We can all play our part, but we need to create the mechanisms to work together. It is not fair to hide behind national determined contributions or to hide behind isolation to be able to address a global scale problem. And that doesn't mean that there should be impositions from others. We have to create a fair system, a system where everybody has a voice, everybody can put their perspective, and we can work together. So that's why we joined this BOGA call for the mitigation program, but also this BOGA call to really work together towards a free fossil fuel future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. And if I can now introduce to the stage as our partner as of last week from the European Commission, EU Climate Envoy, Ambassador Tony Agota. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And first, I want to extend a great thanks to Minister Lars Agard from Denmark, convening us today as co-chair of the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. And I also think it's important to pay tribute to France, another EU member state, and I know my friend Kevin Macron sitting in front has worked ceaselessly on this. Now, there's the saying that the miraculously we do immediately, the impossible takes a little bit longer. And when it comes to history, very often those who said beforehand something was impossible, when it then happened later on said and looked back and said it was inevitable. We're very good at predicting the past. COP28 marked the beginning of the end of fossil fuels. It set the ambitious target of tripling renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency improvements by 2030, and we're committed to that. And the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, with the great Nomer BOGA, is all about taking this forward. And I'm truly proud to say that the European Commission and BOGA have announced a new partnership here at COP29 to accelerate a just, orderly, and equitable transition away from fossil fuels. Because the European Commission is committed to implementation, that is key, President von der Leyen and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa launched a global campaign scaling up renewables in Africa on Monday in Rio, and that potential is immense. The campaign is meant to mobilize investments into renewables into America and to tap into its enormous potential. Also, to keep the political momentum towards these targets, President von der Leyen announced a new Global Energy Transition Forum during the G20 in Rio. This forum will bring together governments, international organizations, and financial actors to work on implementation. The EU is already delivering on the GST. We now generate 50% of our electricity from renewable energy, and we are staying the course. Our Fit for 55 package is signed, sealed, and delivered. We're not turning back. We've deployed record levels of new renewable energy installations in the past 2 years, and the signal to the markets and governments is undeniable, and once the markets internalize this, there is no stopping this transition. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And last but certainly not least, Rachel Kite, Special Representative on Climate from the United Kingdom, and not a BOGA member yet, I should add, but an incredibly supportive government and one that has a very impressive policy commitment made since coming to power. Ambassador.
Thank you, Excellencies, members of the press corps, everybody else. I would like to start by noting the critical importance of reaching agreement here at COP29 across all pillars of the Paris Agreement: mitigation, adaptation, and finance. As the UK, we stand ready to help and work with all countries and the presidency on the NCQG. We think there is a deal to be done here, and we need a deal to be done here. We need an NCQG which accelerates action to keep 1.5 in reach in this critical decade and beyond. The new goal must be a stretch, ambitious, and feasible, with public finance at its heart, whilst maintaining the ability to leverage even greater private finance. It must signal that we must accelerate the ongoing reform of the international financial institutions and the multilateral climate funds. We must call for tougher action on debt sustainability and enhance access for developing countries. At the same time, it is absolutely critical that all countries demonstrate progress towards delivering the ambition and implementation needed to deliver the goals of the Paris Agreement. We all must step up and deliver the action and ambition that is needed. Last year, as my colleagues have already noted, in Dubai, through the agreement of the historic global stocktake outcome, we showed the world what is possible when we all come together. All parties must now show that we are taking action to implement these commitments, to transition away from fossil fuels, triple renewables, double energy efficiency, halt and reverse deforestation, and bring forward ambitious 1.5 aligned, absolute, economy-wide NDCs covering all greenhouse gases and sectors. The UK has been playing a leading role in driving up ambition and, we hope, delivering action. Last week, the Prime Minister announced the UK's new NDC of an 81% cut in emissions by 2035. And just this week, we also launched the Global Clean Power Alliance, acting as a political group of vanguard countries to speed up the clean energy transition globally. We do this because we know how important it is that our international action is backed by our domestic leadership and ambition. Since taking office in July, this government has also lifted the de facto ban on onshore wind, pledged to end new oil and gas licenses, and launched the new national clean power company, GB Energy. This is the kind of pace of endeavour that is necessary across all of our economies. We're very happy to be here in solidarity with the BOGA Alliance, and we urge all other parties to join us in setting ambitious NDCs that show the global stocktake outcomes in practice and engage constructively to reach the stretch, ambition and feasible NCQG outcome that we believe is possible and necessary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if we can move on now, and I want to invite some of our other BOGA ministers and ambassadors to the stage, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So if I can invite up Minister Eamon Ryan from Ireland, Ambassador Kevin Magron from France, Minister Serge Wilms, Luxembourg, Minister from Sweden. Thank you. Have we got anyone else? No. Okay, so we have a compressed time for questions, and we really want to prioritize press questions. So if I can get a show of hands, we'll take them in rounds of 3, and please keep them concise. If we can begin over here at the front to the... And then...
Hi, Philip Kirkegaard from Danish television. I have a question for Susanna Mohammed. Colombia made big headlines when it joined the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Fossil Fuels. And I would like to ask you why you are now joining BOGA, which has not the same level of ambitions. Is this a sign of Colombia backpedaling, or a recognition that it's impossible to get other fossil fuel countries to join the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Fossil Fuels?
Thank you. I think we have to work with all the partners that have the willingness and the objective to transcend fossil fuels, and that is happening at different levels. Colombia wants to become a bridge between the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty and BOGA. Although they are not exactly the same initiatives, I think we can join forces and common efforts. But of course, that is something that we just bring to the table and has to be decided by the parties. But we are a committed member of BOGA also because we see that we can cooperate in that transition. But that doesn't mean that we are not at the same time part of the initiative. We really believe that we need an economic regime that allows for the transition, and we don't have one economic regime. The economic regime requires new rules of the game to really leave the reserves under the earth, even if you have them. But today there is no incentive and no logic of leaving the reserves under the earth. This is the problem. And just based on goodwill, it will not happen. And that the result is that we are expanding production, expanding the frontier of fossil fuels, and at the same time saying that we are reducing emissions. And so it's not matching up. But that's why Colombia is part of this coalition, but also we believe that a fossil non-proliferation fuel treaty or an economic regime for the phasing out of fossil fuels is required in complementation to the UNFCCC.
Thank you. And on the topic of ambition, yeah, please do just check the website and the membership criteria, and we can take questions on that after. If we can take them in rounds as well before we open up to the panel. If we take this one over here, this hand here, and then if I come to you with the blue shirt, and then we'll go out towards the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Matheson from Politico. Minister Mohammed, you've got an investment plan that you've put forward to the world seeking for investments into your economy to help you wean off fossil fuels. Have you found this conference a fruitful place to have conversations with potential investors? And also, has the election in the US changed that plan at all?
Okay, and if we can take these two, and then we'll come back to the panel.
Thank you. Yes, it is a very challenging process to diversify the economy at the speed that climate change is asking for, to really leave oil and gas transcend that. I think the US election does have an impact. We are working on a multi-partner roundtable to be able to create the financial flows for our investment plan for the economic transition of Colombia. We have $40 billion of projects structure, and we are mobilizing our internal finance, our private sector, banking, public sector banking, and we need a complement from abroad. But we had a meeting of these partners here at COP29, and we hope to move forward. If in the next 2 years Colombia can sign an ambitious financial agreement for the investment plan, we could demonstrate that actually we can make this transition. If in the 2 years we are not able to sign that financial plan with our partners, probably an electoral shift will happen, and that will be the end of
way before the end date that you set. So I think this is a real call for other countries to consider doing what the members of BOGA is doing. And then besides setting an end date for oil and gas production, BOGA is also about helping countries that need to transform, and it's the poorer countries here I'm thinking of, to help them create a strategy going away from oil and gas production. Because if the only thing we bring to countries is to lose an income and we don't put anything else instead, it will be way too difficult for the large group of countries to do the transition we're asking for. So please bear in mind that BOGA is about sending clear political signals. It's about getting more to send an end date, but it's also about helping the transition in countries that are not so fortunate to have an economy that can easily survive without the income for the remaining oil and gas production these countries have.
Thank you, Minister. Ambassador Macron.
Can you hear me? Yes, I can pick up from here. I mean, my country, France, has been a driving force behind BOGA this year with our partners, Denmark in particular, Ireland, Minister, thank you. And I think what we see here at COP29 and the difficulty for implementation of the GST and for walking the talk, basically, is becoming harder and harder, will help us with BOGA. I think more and more countries will want to join, and that's a testimony that, you know, the more we see a pushback on the outside and the more this coalition of countries and forward-leaning countries and leaders will move with BOGA to help implementing and this platform and to achieve the goal that we have in the GST. So I think there are several ways of doing it. In France, that's what we're doing with planning our transition with concrete measures on timelines for fossil fuels, phase out. And what we want is policy, national policies, action and calendars and timelines to make sure that we can implement what we have decided last year on paper for a plan for the future. And the solidarity part is obviously very important. My country is doing 2.5 billion of climate finance through the JETPs in particular. I think Minister Mohamed, your country has a great plan for that, and I hope we can support your country in that as well. And finally, I just wanted to highlight that France has also seized all international public funding for oil and gas exploration, production, storage, transport and refining since 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Minister Ryan.
Yeah, can I just use that to come in? There are three things this year I remember, three pieces of information that really were stark in my mind. In the summer, we had a European energy ministers in Hungary, informal meeting, and the IPCC came to present to us, and they said, if we're to have a chance, probability of staying below 1.5 degrees, the carbon limit for the world is some 200 gigatons of carbon we can still release. And we're releasing about 40 gigatons a year. Now, we're all energy ministers or transport ministers. We know, our agriculture ministers, we know how incredibly challenging that is. Like, that's beyond compare challenging, because these are big changes to make. Earlier in the year, maybe because of that scientific understanding, the International Energy Agency had its 50th meeting, ministerial meeting. An agency grounded in the oil and gas industries started to provide oil security. And we agreed two things in our statement: that there should be there's no need for further oil and gas exploration if we're to stay within climate limits. And their analysis showed that if we really did switch off that tap, the business as usual model would bring about 800 billion a year by the end of this decade, investment in fossil fuel, new fossil fuel infrastructure. If we stopped, it would go down to 400 billion. That 400 billion a year would be incredibly consequential if we could switch from the fossil to the clean. I say that, it was only I heard last week, and I can't check the numbers in this, maybe someone else can verify it, but I heard Al Gore say last Thursday that currently Africa's getting none of the investment in clean energy, and that's a disgrace. That has to change. But it's getting 50% of the new fossil fuel investment. I found that hard to believe, but I trust Al Gore in where the source is. So we need to switch from energy to take the energy from the heavens rather than from hell, as you say, Lars. And that's what we have to do. And that's one of the reasons why I think we are focusing on mitigation today. We have to focus on financing too. We all absolutely understand that. But we need to stop the fossil fuel investment. If we don't do that, we all burn. That's as simple. Or tell me where I'm wrong on those figures, where that 200 gigaton figure is. The IPC have got it wrong? I don't think so. You can't change the physics. You've got to change the politics and the economics. That's what we need to do.
Thank you, Minister. I want to just take this one final question, then we are hard stop, but please stay with us and we'll take some questions outside, and anyone who hasn't already come in, please do. Thank you.
Seth Bornstein, the Associated Press. For any of you, if the fossil fuel transition away from fossil fuel language that was in Dubai is not in any of the text this time, what are the BOGA nations prepared to do? Are you prepared? Is this a red line that you will object to and throw a spanner into everything and stop everything, or is this something that's negotiable to you?
Thank you. We can go down.
If you want the results, it's in general not advisable to start saying that you have hundreds and hundreds of red lines. But you're getting close to one of them, I would say.
Could I add to that? Someone said yesterday, I think it's true, everyone's going to go away slightly somewhat unhappy here tomorrow or the day after. And as Lars says, there's going to be red lines crossed in all sorts of ways. But failure to get a deal, get an agreement here would be unforgivable, would be historically shameful. And we cannot do that. We have to reach compromise. We have to reach agreement. Antonio Guterres is going to speak to us later. I think he always says compromise is not a bad word. We all have to. We have to get an agreement here in the next 36 hours.
Okay, with that, I think we're at time. We're being asked to wrap up. Thank you all for coming and joining us. Thank you, ministers, for joining us. And please stay around outside. We'll try and take questions outside.